As a pastor's kid, I grew up with Christian children's media, but for those of you who didn't, its unique flavor might go unappreciated. The closest thing I can compare it to is when you remember a kid's show that was always just a little off, and then you Google it and it turns out that it was Canadian. There's a couple reasons for this. First off, every story needs to relate back to the same source material, the Bible, or at least a Christian worldview. But also, since you're making this content for a smaller audience, that's going to limit your workforce, your funding. The effect of these constrictions make it strange and blunt. It's like a fish that's been separated from the sea and is adapted to its new, smaller environment, to the point that it can no longer return. It does leave us with a few gems, though.
Miles Peterson, a man who had it all. Wealth, status, success. Still, something was lacking. Miserable, alone, his spirit beaten, Miles Peterson gave up. Then, in his darkest hour, the words of a single book began to change his life.
Bible.
And at last, Miles Peterson felt the burning desire to know God. Inspired by the Word of God and equipped with unyielding faith, Miles pledged to fight evil in the name of God as Bibleman.
But what if there was a strange little fish that could make it back to the ocean? A piece of Christian children's media, not VeggieTales. A movie for kids. It's not Narnia either. Stop guessing. That could make that journey. It's hard to discuss P of E in an interesting way because at its core, it's just a very competently done movie. There's a stable of A-list Hollywood talent for the voice actors. The animation was groundbreaking for its time, mixing together 2D animation, 3D, and even paintings. The music is just a whole soundtrack of bops. Every single song in here is a bop. The soundtrack of this movie makes The Lion King look like Pete's Dragon. And I could go on and on about this movie for literally hours, and the original script was just me doing that. But at that point, you could use this time to just watch the movie and enjoy it for yourself. Instead, I want to look at what separates Prince of Egypt from other Christian kids' media. And in my opinion, something that makes it truly special.
I am a sovereign prince of Egypt.
In developing this movie, the directors consulted a lot of religious leaders at every step of development. They wanted to treat what was a religious story with some serial cultural weight behind it with respect. The biggest departure that I can see from the biblical account is that this Moses, our Moses, is a lot more Egyptian. Rather than just being raised in Pharaoh's house, he is effectively the Pharaoh's second son. We first meet our Moses as a young, haughty prince, where his older brother, Ramses, has grown stiff and self-serious under the pressure of inheriting a dynasty. The lack of that pressure has left Moses a mischievous, good-time boy. Ramses and Moses' relationship is defined by Moses getting Ramses in and out of trouble, partially because he can't help it, but partially because I think Ramses needs that. It's a necessary release from the incredible pressure he's under, and it's a way that Moses cares for his brother. Ramses has a heck of a daddy issue a brewing. His safe space is he curls up on this larger than life, unfeeling, cold stone statue of his own father, right in its lap. And there's somewhere, somehow, a metaphor there. Back to Moses, his impish nature belies compassion at the core of his character. I'm not sure if that's how you use belies. I'm leaving it in them. Moses water balloons Wario and Waluigi to pull his brother out of a self-loathing spiral. He embarrasses this captured woman in order to save her life. He uses humor not just for his own amusement, but also as a way of deflecting or circumventing the environment he finds himself in. One that, while it cares for his material needs, is deeply oppressive. A little ways into the movie, Moses finds out that he was born a slave. His biological mother died waiting for him to return and save her. And his adopted father pulled a genocide that targeted him. And he's not very sorry about that.
Oh, my son, they were only slaves.
And when confronted by this, Moses tries to shrug it off. Of course he does. It's an overwhelming series of realizations, and they don't have therapists back then. Therapy is killing a goat or something. Therapies, you talk to a bird and hope it carries your message to God. I'm just riffing it. But Moses can't go back. This teacup will not unshatter. And so, when Moses next sees the abuse that he's overlooked and directly benefited from his entire life, he has to do something. And so he kills one of his employees.
Moses! Stop!
Moses flees in his guilt, and I think this is a good example of the emotional complexity in this movie, because it's not just the guilt of having taken a life. It's the guilt of not having acted sooner, the guilt of benefiting off the backs of slavery, of his own people, his entire life. It's the guilt of knowing that the repercussions for him are entirely optional. Accountability is not a feature of his life in Egypt. So he leaves and surrenders himself to the desert.
His spirit beaten, Miles Peterson gave up.
And when he does, he finds meaning, a new community, a beautiful wife, a gorgeous, just a funny, attractive. A quick aside, this movie was very formative when it comes to my taste in women.
Brown skin, ATL shawty with the shades on, braids long, this her favorite song. That's my type, nigga, that's my brown skin, ATL shawty with the shades on, braids long, this her favorite song. That's my type, nigga, that's
I was instantly attracted to Moses' wife, Zipporah. However, she's an adult character and I was a little boy, so I projected that attraction onto her more age-appropriate sister. We would, of course, get married, and then Moses would be my brother-in-law, and we'd chill in the desert together, and also we'd have lightsabers. His would be blue and mine would be green because Attack of the Clones hadn't come out. And when I told people I wanted a purple lightsaber, they said that made me gay. But it didn't, because Mace Windu has a purple lightsaber and he's not gay. He's not anything. I did a lot of research on Google to see whether Mace Windu is gay, and they said he wasn't anything. The only contradictory evidence is a 375-page fan fiction loosely based on the adventures of Huckleberry Finn called On the Rivers of Naboo. I forgot where I was. Anyway, so then Moses meets God. When God reaches out to Moses, choosing him as the liberator of his people, it's not just the creator of the universe showing up and telling Moses explicitly he is special. And it's not just a chance to do something amazing and good. It's a chance to wash away all his past sins of his younger life. Another quick side note, I absolutely love this scene where Moses excitedly runs home to tell his wife that he met God in a cave, and we see her get progressively more and more concerned the longer he goes on explaining it. Moses and his beautiful wife head back to Egypt to confront the father that raised and attempted to murder Moses. But when they show up, Seti isn't on the throne. It's Ramses. And the two reunite as brothers, and they clearly love each other. And while Ramses wants them to pick up right where they left off, we as the audience know that's impossible. Moses has to break it to his brother that he didn't return to him. Instead, he's come back to oppose him. We know what happens next. Pharaoh refuses to free the slaves. God sends down a plague. Moses asks again, and Prince of Egypt drops yet another iconic banger into our laps.
Once I called you brother. Once I thought the chance to make you laugh was all I ever wanted. This was my home. All this pain and devastation, how it tortures me inside. All the innocent who suffer from your stubbornness and pride.
You who I called brother, how could you have come to hate me so? Is this what you wanted? I will not let my people go.
Before the final plague, Moses tries to reach out to his brother one last time. And he almost gets through to him. He almost brings back that boy. He's a man. He almost reaches that young man that he left in Egypt all those years ago. This time, Ramses is stopped not by the ghost of his father, but by his own son. Ramses cannot escape this cycle that he was raised in, this cycle that Moses has essentially abandoned him to when he fled. And so what happens next is inevitable. Miracles in this film are spectacle with purpose. They're a tactical breaking of natural law in order to draw as much attention to themselves as possible. Except the last plague. This miracle is explicitly not meant to be seen. It's forbidden to be looked upon. When I've seen online discussions of this movie, this is the scene that tends to rub most people the wrong way. Or at least, the abrupt tonal shift after this scene does.
Have my permission to go.
Leave me.
Five minutes later.
In making this video, I looked up some religious explanations for what the killing of the firstborn means. A lot of them I'd been exposed to as a kid growing up in the church, that it was Pharaoh's stubbornness that brought this upon Egypt, that Pharaoh was, like any leader, responsible for his people. They bring up how the death of the firstborn isn't exclusively children, and how the firstborn carries a real cultural significance in terms of inheritance and family lines. But all these explanations read as excuses. The development team on Prince of Egypt would have known all these explanations, all this cultural background, but they chose to only show the death of children. They painstakingly animated this kid's little body hitting the ground. They showed us this boy stop breathing in bed next to his mother. I think all these explanations only serve to distance ourselves from the discomfort of that moment. And I think that's the wrong place to take it. It's meant to be horrifying. In fact, every miracle in this movie, I remember scaring me as a child. When Moses encounters the burning bush and he questions God's decision to pick him, God flings him against the rocks in a blast of light. God makes a super snake eat two other snakes whole. Even the splitting of the Red Sea is this moment that's fraught with suspense and danger. I think they did this because God, as a concept, is terrifying. The idea of this alien, deathless being that has decided your fate long before you were born, against who you could never hope to overcome or outdo. I'll likely never watch so much Christian children's media again. It's morality plays, Bible stories I've read dozens of times. I don't need to be taught those moral lessons. I'm an adult who can reason morally. When I do something wrong, it's on purpose. But I keep going back to Prince of Egypt because that fear it invokes feels valuable to me. I think if more people came into contact in that fear, certainly in the church, but in society as a whole, we'd live in a better world. I've talked a lot about the horror of the idea of God, but horror isn't where I want to leave it. There's a humility from coming into contact with something beyond yourself, something that you can't control, something that no amount of human ingenuity can overcome. The God of Bibleman is a tool constructed by humans. But the God in A Prince of Egypt is the ocean. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. I hope, even though this one was definitely a little more personal, it was still accessible and you liked it. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, or comment. And if you didn't, you still have to do those three things. It's the law, and the punishment for breaking the law is being smushed by a giant nose.